Hello. In this recording of our Justia webinar, The Internship Blueprint, Designing Inclusive Programs That Deliver Results, Keisha Stokes-Huff explains the process of designing inclusive legal internship programs, covering strategies for recruiting and reviewing, fostering a supportive and diverse work environment, as well as building strong mentorship connections that last beyond the internship. Remember, if you'd like to see more Justia videos on law practice and legal marketing, please be sure to subscribe to our channel.
Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here with you today. So the purpose of the presentation today is to walk you through the entire process of planning and executing your internship program. And we're focused on designing inclusive programs that will deliver results for you and your firm and also deliver positive results for the interns. So that's me, and that's my contact information on LinkedIn where you can find me. I do a lot of training and presentation about interns, inclusion, collaborative work in the legal space. So feel free to reach out to me if you have any follow-up questions that we don't address during the presentation today. I'm also happy to share materials if that would be helpful for you. But what I hope comes out of this program is enthusiasm around the process of bringing on interns and supporting them, this practical skills training and the training that happens in our offices as lawyers is going to become increasingly important. It's a bigger and bigger part of the bar exam, for instance. So we want to make sure that the law students who are working with us are getting the most that they can from the experience. So let's start with a poll. How much experience do you have working with interns? Nina's going to circulate the poll. Do you have little or no experience? Have you worked with interns occasionally, or are you an experienced intern supervisor? And this will help me tailor the presentation to the experiences that you all bring to this session. So please complete the poll. All right. So it looks like we have a mix here with us. 32% having little or no experience, 56% having worked with interns occasionally, and 12% experienced intern supervisors. So I think there will be something in this presentation for everyone, and I'll address questions that you have as we go along and at the end. So for our agenda today, we're going to start with recruiting interns. Then we'll go to inclusive interviews and hiring, creating a supportive work environment for interns. And then we'll finish with navigating hybrid work and mentorship and networking. So let's start with recruiting. So how do we promote our internship program? In every city, in every town, there are law offices, all of which can benefit from assistance from interns. But then how do you make your internship program stand out, stand apart from the other firms and legal organizations? So first, I recommend creating postings about your internship program. The first place that you want to post about the internship program is on your own website for your organization. So if you have a page where you post attorney positions, considering making space to also post about your internship program. Beyond that, I would recommend creating notices and postings about your internship program that you can circulate more broadly, including with law schools that are in your area and also law schools that are outside of your area that you haven't worked with before. Most law schools have a career services office, and their job is to help connect law students with potential opportunities in the workplace, including internship opportunities. So you can start with circulating your notices and postings with the law schools that you're interested in recruiting from. Many law schools also have a dedicated public interest office that can also help to steer students who are particularly interested in public interest work. So if you are a public interest legal organization or you have a public interest firm, in addition to working with career services, then you can work with the public interest office for the law schools that you're working with. And all of the career services staff and the public interest program staff at law schools are very dedicated and enthusiastic about connecting their students with organizations where they can get a great experience. So they're happy to hear from you. Don't feel like you're taking up anybody's time. And also don't feel that the law school career services and public interest programs are only interested in the big offices or the big firms. Students want a range of experiences. Not every student wants to work in a big firm or a big office. So even if you have a small office or even a solo practitioner, if you can benefit from having the support of an intern, connect with the law school and they will make arrangements for you. Another great thing that law schools do is that they have career fairs and public interest fairs for law students each year. So once you connect with career services and the public interest team, then you can get on the schedule for these fairs and participate. And that's a great way to meet potential interns directly. And lastly, I'll say use social media to promote your internship program. That is where the young people are. And there are plenty of websites, including Justia, that can help you make connections with potential candidates. So use Justia, use LinkedIn. You can use Facebook, X. Um, TikTok is becoming more popular. I've heard from some lawyers that they are promoting their firms on TikTok. And so if you want to explore that, then give it a try. It will connect you with an audience that you might not otherwise be able to reach if you're not engaging with social media. And also be aware of your law school recruiting timelines. Generally, in the fall, at the beginning of the school year, that's when you will have fall OCI or on campus interviewing at each law school. The OCI tends to be focused on law firms, civil law firms, but other types of practices can participate as well in fall OCI. And that's a good place early on in the process of students considering their options for the next summer. You can go ahead and put yourself forward to them in fall OCI. In the spring, law schools also tend to have public interest career fairs and recruiting events. And so this is where your public interest organizations, your government organizations will take the lead in promoting their programs and internship experience to potential internship candidates. And lastly, most schools offer externships um, for school credit throughout the school year. So there will be opportunity for externs in the fall, externs in the spring. Some law schools have like an intersession period over the winter break where they may offer externships in that time, and some schools may offer externships in the summer. This is also another good way to work with law students is through the externship program. And again, it doesn't matter the size of your organization or firm, as long as there's a need in work that the extern can support your team with, then the externship office at the law school will work to accommodate finding someone for you. So next, we're going to talk about diversity with our internship program and how we build diverse internship cohorts. So diversity is just the presence of differences within a given setting. Diversity is broad. It includes all sorts of characteristics, including race, but not limited to race. Other diverse characteristics include our ethnicity, our gender identity, sexual orientation, age or the generation that we come from, our abilities and any disabilities that we may have, our religion, our culture, our experiences, and really everything that helps to form our identities. So, having diverse perspectives on your team, including diverse perspectives from interns, can help improve your outcomes for your clients, can help bring in new clients that you didn't formerly have relationships with, can help you improve problem solving on your case teams, and will enhance the well being in the workplace for all of your colleagues. So, these are some tips for building diverse internship cohorts. First, I would say broaden your outreach to law schools that you don't typically recruit from. When I talk to lawyers about internship programs and their internship program, some feedback I get is that, at our firm, we tend to rely on this particular law school because that's where I went to law school, or that's where the partner went to law school, or it's the closest one to the office. And so that's just where we get all of our interns from. But when you do that, you're limiting yourself to the perspective of students just from one particular school. And there may be other students at other schools who would be interested in working for you or at least learning more about your program, but they don't have that opportunity and you're not getting their perspective. So, one thing I would say to start with is just broaden your outreach. You'd be surprised how many students are really interested in going to a totally new place for the summer to learn the practice of law. And, there might be a student at Harvard who's interested in coming to Louisiana to your firm to work with you for the summer. So, broaden your outreach to different places geographically. Um, Something else you can do to build diverse cohorts is connect with affinity programs, minority bar associations in your area. Um, affinity programs, particularly at law schools like BALSA, the Black Law Students Association, and other organizations, they're also working with the students who are members of those organizations to connect them with good placement opportunities. And so, if you are able to build a relationship with an affinity program, then that can help you in terms of your recruiting. And the minority bar associations in your area and other areas are also working with law students to help connect them with opportunities. And also encourage your former interns to submit referrals. As you start to build a diverse internship cohort, people with different experiences, people from different law schools and different backgrounds and perspectives, they will begin to recommend your firm and organization to people they know. And that can also help build on the recruiting that you've already done and connect you with other diverse candidates. So, next, we're going to talk about inclusive interviews in hiring. Something that's very important for anyone who's in a management position or supervisory position for any firm is to understand implicit bias. Implicit bias, and it's also called unconscious bias, is an unconscious or unaware form of discrimination or stereotyping based on the characteristics of others. That can be race, gender, sexual orientation, age, physical ability, and other characteristics. And to address implicit bias from the perspective of an internship coordinator, we need to start by acknowledging that we all have implicit biases, and that these can negatively affect our interactions with people that we work with or we encounter in our work, and then it can also influence our hiring decisions. So, as a person with hiring responsibility, it's important to examine yourself as you're making hiring decisions, or if you're having an interview and you feel uncertain about the candidate, really understand why. Where is that feeling coming from, and making sure that it's coming from a place that is like evidence based, and that you're going to be consistent with other candidates, and it's not a snap reaction that can be grounded in implicit bias. Also, practice considering the perspective of someone from a group that's different from your own. And just doing that and practicing that will help you also to be aware of your implicit biases as you encounter them. So, to address implicit bias, we also want to have structures and procedures in place that weed out bias and promote inclusivity. So, here are some tips for inclusive interviewing. First, you want to expand the candidate pool. Um, if you're only interviewing people or considering people for interviews from a limited background, demographic experience, then that can also be a manifestation of bias. So, just like I talked about expanding the law schools that you recruit from, then also consider expanding the candidate pool that you would hire from or interview from to ensure, that you're considering the best candidates and not just limited to a narrow view of this is the type of person who works well with our organization. Something else that can help promote inclusivity is doing blind resume reviews. And what we mean by blind is we omit information in the resume from the panel of people who are reviewing that could influence the panel for reasons that aren't tied to the goals of the program or the experiences that we're looking for. So, for instance, if you know that your office typically hires from one particular law school, then when the candidates are being reviewed by the panel who's considering them, then you might omit law school or redact law school from the resume so that the reviewers aren't focusing on the school, they're focusing on the substance of what's in the resume. Um, Names are something that also have been shown statistically to have a negative impact on hiring if the name is associated with a particular racial group. So, for instance, myself, Keisha, my name is an African American name. Um, and so, with my name on the resume, if people have an implicit bias against African Americans, then that can show up in the hiring decision. So, one way to avoid that is redact the name for the panel that's considering the candidates. So then the panel isn't making a decision based on the name, they're making a decision based on the substance of what's in the resume. Something else to consider is the composition of the panel itself. Who is it that's considering these applications? And maybe at your law office, if there's only been one person who's been responsible for reviewing internship applications and selecting candidates, then it might be a good idea to expand that, to have more people weigh into that process and also include people with different backgrounds and different experiences. This is another way to avoid the impact of implicit bias in our hiring decisions. And the last thing that I'll offer on techniques is having standard interview questions. One thing that we see in practice in terms of hiring interns or hiring attorneys is people that we feel an affinity or connection with is a lot easier for us to have a conversation with depth than it is for people that we don't necessarily have that instant connection with. But if we have standard questions that we're asking all the candidates, then that gives all the candidates an opportunity to show us why they are the best candidate for us versus asking, those we have an affinity with more questions or more involved questions, and those we don't have an affinity with just more surface questions. So I would say, at least for your first interview or initial interview, having standard questions that all the candidates will answer will help to avoid the impact of bias on that part of the interview. I also want to talk about flexibility in interviewing. We're all aware we're on Zoom now that we have technologies that we didn't have 10 to 20 years ago that can help us accommodate interviews in a way that's more convenient for us, maybe for the candidates, and also less expensive than someone traveling, especially if they have to travel from out of state for an interview. So be aware of these emerging technologies and platforms. In addition to Zoom, Microsoft Office Teams has meeting capabilities, virtual meeting capabilities. Google has a virtual meeting app as well. So be aware of these and, select an option for your firm that works in terms of your technology that you use at the firm, but also, your expense. Some of these technologies are very expensive and some of them are inexpensive. So explore what works best for your firm. Consider the scheduling needs and considerations of the candidates as well. All candidates might not have the same ability or flexibility to come at the same time as another candidate would for an interview. So, rather than just saying, this is your interview, this is when it is, be there, you can actually engage with a discussion with the candidates on, what's your schedule look like? Are there times for the interview that would be better for you or worse for you? Would you prefer an in-person interview, or is it more convenient for you to do a virtual interview and really have a conversation with them? That will make the candidate feel more assured that the office that they're considering working for is considerate of the needs and the obligations of the candidates and the staff. And definitely ask about and try to accommodate any special needs that a candidate would have. Consider whether your office and the space that you would like to have your interview is accessible for someone, for instance, in a wheelchair, if a candidate has needs like that. So do what you can to make the interview accessible and a positive experience for the candidates. And creating an inclusive interview environment, I would say with all candidates, provide an overview of the interview process, um, and provide it as early as you can in the process. Who are they going to be interviewing with? Is it a one-step interview, or is it multi-steps? Definitely let a candidate know if the interview is going to be really lengthy or all day, and they're going to be meeting multiple people in a series of interviews. Whatever it is that you develop for your office, share in an inclusive fashion what the intern candidate should expect. For our interview environment, we want to insist on respect and civility. So when you're choosing team members to participate in the interviews, then that should be emphasized to them as well. That the interview process is one that's civil. That's one of the requirements for all attorneys in practice, and respectful. Definitely during the interview, make sure that you have time for questions from the candidates. Um, usually they have thought of things ahead of time that they want to ask about, but then also during the interview, you may have raised some points for them that they want to follow up on. So make sure that you leave space during the interview process for that, and then invite their feedback on the interview process, and let them know they don't have to provide feedback in the moment. They can also follow up after with any feedback they have. And the feedback that you get on the interview process, as an organization, review it, consider it, and then make adjustments accordingly based on what you find. Next, we're going to talk about creating a supportive work environment for interns. So before the internship begins, something that I like to do, and I think is really important, is check in with the new hires before their first day. Um, you wouldn't believe how often it happens that, you select and hire an intern sometimes months prior to the internship start date. And then offices can kind of forget about the intern until the intern starts. And then it feels like nobody was prepared for the intern to start. And nobody on the staff really knows who the interns are. So check in with your new hires before their first day. Give them any information that they need about how to get to the office, where to park, who to check in with when they first get there, what to do if they get to the office first, before others get there, where do they wait, all of this, just prepare them for the first day. Also, circulate resources to the interns that can be helpful for them as they make their plans for the summer. So this might be housing recommendations in your area. Um, one housing resource that I find works in Montgomery, Alabama, where I live, and I think other places as well, is that colleges will tend to have dormitory housing that they're not using or is not full over the summer. So that can be a good resource for interns, for a place to stay if they're relocating for the summer to work with your organization. And also, like I said, information about the office, information about orientation, how long will orientation be, where will it be? Will it be at the office or will it be at a different location or will it be virtual? And just what they should look forward to in the beginning. And lastly, and this is very important, share information about the new interns with your staff before the interns start. And prepare your staff to be ready to welcome the interns, to be able to direct them to where they need to go and where to find things so that everybody's already in a spirit where they're prepared and looking forward to the interns being there and not just surprised that, oh, the summer internship started. Intern orientation. This is an important time for the interns. They're showing up, they're excited, but they're also nervous. And how do they go about becoming integrated into the office? So, during intern orientation, you want to reintroduce your firm and provide an overview of the firm's work. Discuss work expectations and the process for receiving and submitting assignments. It's up to you and your office, the system that you want to put in place, but it's very important to have documentation of what the interns are being assigned, and then also have documentation of the work that they produce. Um, Create space for the interns to connect with each other and other work colleagues during the orientation. So that might be interns visiting the offices of their colleagues and spending a few minutes with them. That might be having a social time or a coffee break during the orientation for people to get together and chat in an informal way. Um, this is key. Provide a training on any office technology that the interns are going to be expected to use. So if there's a case management system, making sure that they know where that is and how that works. If there is, if you use Teams for chats, Microsoft Teams for chat, sharing that with them and making sure they're added to the appropriate Teams channels. Let them know who they need to contact by email when they need anything related to technology. Technology can be a big source of stress during the initial time at a new job. And so, as much information as you can provide during orientation to prepare the interns and reassure them and let them know who they need to go to when they do encounter problems with technology, then that's very important. And lastly, for the orientation, I recommend providing lunch and or a welcome gift or something on the first day. Just something to make the intern feel special and welcome and show that you're dedicating time to them. During the internship, I think it's really important to include the interns as much as you can in training opportunities, including training opportunities that you're providing for staff members. This training can be just as useful for interns and in preparing them for their future careers as lawyers as it can be for staff members who are already working in law practice. So, practical skills training. Interns benefit from trainings on research and writing, interviewing, these things that attorneys do all the time. Invite some of the attorneys in to give trainings. That can be helpful for interns and also help them to build a rapport with the trainers. Consider training opportunities on career development for interns. I always do a training on clerkships for interns as a former law clerk myself. You can do career trainings on like networking. How do you connect with other lawyers? How do you build your practice? How do you build your client base when you're out into practice? These are things that you can share during career development trainings. If attorneys in your office are participating or leading CLE programs and webinars, consider including the interns as well as the attorneys in these programs. Um, and in terms of really practical level experience, uh, moot oral arguments, preparation that you're doing for trials and hearings, including interns in all of that prep work, again, is good practical experience for them. And when you go to court during the course of the internship, consider taking the interns with you. I can't tell you how much they appreciate that opportunity just to go to court to see the things that we learn about in law school actually become real in the courtroom and in actual practice. And if you have an opportunity during court or during a break to introduce the interns to the judge and the judge's staff, as a former clerk myself, I can't tell you how much the judges enjoy and appreciate that opportunity. They consider it a part of their responsibility to build the next generation of legal talent and instill in them the appropriate values and norms. So bring the interns with you. Let them meet your courthouse family. And then I also have guidance for intern work assignments. This is where we can see like breakdown in communication and understanding between the interns and the attorneys. And these are some ways that I think we can avoid some of those challenges. So first, I would encourage you to provide assignments for interns in writing using clear language. And this isn't to say that you might not initially give the assignment orally. If an attorney is meeting with the intern, they're saying, okay, this is what I want you to do, and this is what I'm going to handle. But if you do that, if you convey the assignment orally, I would follow up after that meeting by documenting the assignment in writing, just to make sure the intern and yourself clearly understand and are on the same page about what the intern is supposed to do. And the most important thing that a lot of us don't do is include the due date for the assignment. This really helps the intern. It helps to avoid conflict. If you don't include the due date, then you have some interns that will, try to rush and put a lot of pressure on themselves to do it that day, even though it's something that you might not need until the end of the week. So letting them have the due date, they can pace themselves in their work to make sure that they accomplish it in the time needed without putting undue stress or pressure on themselves. The other problem when we don't have the due date is the intern might not realize how urgent the information is needed. And so they'll be operating on a slower pace, but you really need it tomorrow. So definitely include the due date with your assignments. Um, Share background information and any related documents that the intern will need to understand the project and complete the project successfully when you give the assignment. It happens quite a bit that interns are given an assignment and not necessarily a lot of direction on where to find the information that they need. And then, they feel kind of stuck in not knowing what to do because they're interns. They feel like I should know where this is, but I don't know where this is. And then there can be like a time period where they're confused and at a loss before they come to the person who gave them the project for direction. So provide as much information as you can that you think the intern will need to complete this assignment successfully when you give the assignment. Um, Also, and relatedly, for interns to understand what they're doing, how their work is useful, it's best for them to be involved also in the cases that they're working on, beyond just the assignment itself. So include interns in case team meetings that are related to the assignment so they can have context on what is going on and where their assignment fits into the case plan. And definitely encourage interns to ask follow-up questions if they don't understand anything, if they need additional direction or help. Reassure them that they shouldn't feel bad about coming to you for additional help or guidance. And they're actually encouraged to get that help and seek that help rather than wait until a problem develops into a bigger problem. And, you know, I want to talk about providing diverse internship opportunities. I think, in law firms, we tend to rely on interns to do legal research, legal writing, and in particular, legal research memos. And that research is important. Those memos can be really helpful to case teams. But what I hear from interns is they also want to get other experiences. They want to have diverse opportunities over the course of their internship. So consider including them in case team meetings, CLEs and trainings, client and witness interviews, depositions, and court appearances, hearings, trials, and oral arguments so that they're getting a range of experiences over the course of their internship and not only contributing in the legal research space. Check-ins with interns are very important. Some of the worst internship experiences that I hear about are interns who are kind of just for the whole summer, given a dark room in a corner somewhere and never really come out of the corner and don't get to have interaction with the colleagues that they're supporting as an intern. So that's the opposite of what you want. As a supervisor, you want to connect with and build a relationship with your intern on a regular basis. For interns over the summer, I recommend weekly check-in meetings, talking about their assignments that they're getting, how are the assignments going, feedback that they're getting from the attorneys that they're working with. For your check-in, develop a shared agenda with the intern. There are a lot of check-in agenda formats that you can find if you Google it. And the best ones allow the supervisor, to contribute to the agenda, but also the supervisee to contribute to the agenda. Um, and you want to give the interns that opportunity. For check-ins, I recommend opening with a personal wellness check before you just dive into the work. So rather than starting a check-in with, how are you coming on this assignment? Start with how are you? And then after you have a little bit of discussion about that and the intern is comfortable, then you can talk about the work. And that shows your, commitment to their personal well-being along with your commitment to the work. And during the check-ins, solicit feedback from the interns. How are things going? How is the internship going? Are you happy with the experiences that you're getting so far? What additional experience would you like to get over the course of the summer? And for our feedback to the interns, these are the three essentials of effective feedback. That the feedback is timely. It is really detrimental to the intern's experience to be in the dark about how they're performing, until the end of the summer, and then they learn, well, actually, you've been performing poorly this whole time. Um, the feedback at the end of the summer shouldn't be a surprise. They should be getting feedback over the course of the summer, and they should be attempting to make adjustments to better meet the needs of the organization over the course of the summer, not performing poorly throughout the summer and only learning at the end that they haven't been doing well. So we want to provide timely feedback. When we learn that there's an issue and there's an area that they need to improve, we want to proactively share that with the intern and work with them to get better. Feedback should be fair as well. Um, you know, if the intern is working on multiple projects and they fall short on one, we don't want to focus on the one they feel short in to the exclusion of their performance on the other tasks. So we want to give a comprehensive overview of what they worked on. This is where you've done well. This is where you need to improve, and make sure that we're being fair and consistent in how we approach all interns in terms of positive and constructive feedback. And lastly, feedback should be reciprocal. So even as we're offering feedback to the interns, we're also asking them, how can I better support you? Are there ways that the assignment could have been communicated to you that you would have understood better? Ask them what we can do as well to improve their performance and improve our collaboration. Now I want to talk about critical conversations, because these are kind of the hardest moments that we have during our internship experience. So critical conversations are those difficult conversations that we may need to have with interns that involve important matters in which perspectives may vary and emotions are likely to run strong. So these are kind of the serious mistakes or challenges or problems that might happen during the course of an internship. So it's important to approach critical conversations with care and planning, and not coming from just a place of emotional upset, which we might feel when these kinds of situations arise. So say for instance, a team was really dependent on the intern to complete a particular writing project by a certain date, and they needed that in order to file a motion. And the intern just didn't get it done. That might be a time where you need to have one of these critical conversations, but you want to approach it with care and planning, and not just out of anger, about what didn't happen that should have happened. So, this is the sequence and how I recommend going about a critical conversation. Start with the invitation to the intern that you want to meet to discuss this particular issue. It's really helpful that you just acknowledge what the conversation is going to be about in advance, so the intern doesn't feel like unprepared or ambushed when you have this conversation. And then yourself as an internship coordinator, you have to do your preparation for the critical conversation. What do we know? And also think about the things that we may not know. If we know that the intern didn't complete the assignment by the time given, then that's something that we do know. Things we might not know are, why didn't the intern complete the assignment at the time given? Was something extraneous going on? Did something medical happen with the intern or the intern's family member? These are things that we may not know that we'll learn about during the critical conversation. Next is the engagement and, the bulk of the conversation itself, discussing what happened, your understanding of what happened, and also getting the intern's perspective about it. And then we'll conclude the meeting with our resolution. You know, how do we come to an understanding of what happened and our agreement of how we're going to handle situations like this as we move forward, or what we're going to change as we move forward to avoid this sort of situation happening again. For critical conversations, my biggest advice is to be curious. Prioritize dialogue and understanding rather than just accusation. This is what you did. Actually talk about what happened and really try to get to the root of why. That's how you're going to solve and avoid similar situations from happening going forward. Okay, when interns come to us with important feedback or concerns or things that they're looking for us to deal with, again, we want to be prompt and timely. Let them know that you received the feedback and that you're going to look into it. Do a timely investigation of the concerns that the interns brought to you. Have in mind a solution oriented approach, not just a kind of defensive approach. Um, what can we do to address the concern that's going to make a better or an improved working environment for everyone, or at least everyone involved in the situation? And whatever the resolution is on the intern's feedback, clearly communicate what the resolution was. And from a perspective of, again, I'm here to support you. If there's anything else that you need, please let me know. And again, reassure the intern of your concern and consideration. Next, we're going to talk about navigating hybrid work, because this is, in modern times, this is very important. So, understanding remote and hybrid work. So, remote work is broad, it's flexible work arrangements that allow team members to work outside of the traditional office environment. Remote work might be permanent. It might be temporary, or it might be certain times where you're working remotely or your team members are. Hybrid work is a type of remote work arrangement with the team members' schedule reflecting some time in the traditional office and sometimes out of the office. So, for your particular office, maybe everyone works in the office Monday through Thursday, and then you work from home or wherever you are on Friday, and that would be a hybrid work arrangement. So for interns, there are pros and cons to remote work and hybrid work. On the positives, you can have flexibility. Basically for all of us, technology advances allow us to work together and collaborate with each other, even though we're distant from each other. There can also be a cost savings in terms of expenses for the intern to relocate to the city where your office is, for them to find housing, travel costs coming to the office each day. Remote work can avoid that. Um, it can also save in terms of space for our offices. If your firm only has a small office, for solo practitioners who may work from home, it may be better for you just for the intern to work from the intern space and you work from your own space, to avoid congestion in a home office or a small office. But there also comes for remote work. For one, interns can feel isolated from their fellow interns or their colleagues in the office if they're not seeing them on a regular basis. Communication is also something that you have to plan for when you have a remote or hybrid work environment. When we're in the office, we kind of just depend on, well, if somebody needs me, they can just stop by. But when you're working remotely, then you don't have that drop by opportunity. So how are you going to make space where you can connect with your intern or team members? Are there certain hours that you're going to let them know that you're available for any discussions about anything that just happens to come up? Um, and then lastly, in terms of oversight, you also won't be able to just drop by the intern's office if they're not at the office with you to see how they're coming with projects. So you have to put plans in place for how you're going to check in about projects and how they're developing. So here are some tools for hybrid success. First, as we talked about, remote meeting platforms and being acquainted with all of them. And I put here, in the foremost, Zoom and Teams. Collaborative word processing technology. So these are technologies that will allow multiple people to work on a document together at the same time. So Microsoft OneDrive and SharePoint enable this, and Google Docs, you can do that as well. Web-based case management platforms, if your office uses a case management system, then having a system that's accessible on the cloud, through any web browser is helpful. Clio and Smokeball are examples. At our office, we use Lidify. And cloud storage services for sharing large files, like Dropbox and Box can be useful. And then in terms of connection and socialization for interns, again, having those regular check-in meetings, doing them weekly, preferably and consistently is important. When we are working remotely, have remote coffee breaks or social hours with colleagues. These are really important for interns. um, Maybe have games, getting to know you, spaces for people to connect virtually. Including interns in virtual case team meetings, inviting interns to participate in field work, so work that's happening outside the office, such as interviewing witnesses, and also including them in court appearances. And then trying to schedule over the course of the internship some in-person events, so that they are able to develop that personal connection with their colleagues and fellow interns. Next, we're going to talk about mentorship and networking. So, with mentorship, our focus is on strategies for making connections that extend beyond the internship. So, what is a legal mentor? A legal mentor is an experienced attorney who provides guidance, advice, and support to less experienced legal professionals and law students. And ideally, the role of a legal mentor will continue after the internship has concluded. So when we're finishing the internship, we want to have a focus on mentorship and how we're going to extend our relationship with the intern beyond the internship. So first, evaluation forms. We want to have forms for the supervisors and for the interns to give their feedback on the experience that they've had over the course of the internship. And then before the interns depart, having an exit interview with the interns to discuss what went well and what didn't go well from their perspective. Provide guidance to the interns about references. What's the process if they need a reference for a job or if they need a reference for the state bar? Who should I talk to? What information do I need to provide? Just providing guidance for them because we expect them to continue to connect with us as they need references going forward, and sharing contact information for how they can follow up with you as an internship coordinator in the organization. Stay connected with the interns. Invite them to share updates with you and circulate those updates among your staff. Share case updates with them, news about the organization, and job postings from your office. Again, they may have interns or potential internship candidates that they will be recommending to you. When interns and former interns do reach out to you for references and advice, make those connections, provide those references, and remain accessible to the interns. And the big picture is that when we have a successful internship program, we're able to build on the relationships with our former interns to help sustain our internship program. And we don't have to put the same work that we put in the beginning just to build our network with our former interns and maintaining positive relationships with them. They will help us a lot in developing relationships with future candidates. And that's our time. We're going to go to questions and I'll hand it to Nina.
Thank you so much, Keisha, for all of your insights on creating inclusive and effective internship programs. Now, as Keisha mentioned, we can go ahead and move on to questions and answers. So if you have any questions for Keisha, please feel free to submit them by clicking the Q&A button in the control panel at the bottom of your screen and submitting them there. It looks like we already have a few. So our first question is, what would you say are the most effective ways to assess an intern's potential beyond just their traditional academic metrics?
Yes, I would say, for application materials, for interns, in addition to like resume and transcript, writing sample can be really helpful. And that'll give you a sense of the intern's writing ability that you don't necessarily get from their academic transcript. Something else I would ask about is any practical experiences that they've had in working with clients, working on cases, either during law school or prior to law school. So a lot of our law schools have clinical programs. They might have gotten clinical experience there, or a lot of law students were formerly paralegals, so they have practical experience that they bring to the table even before law school that other candidates might not have. So I would look at those.
Awesome. Thank you, Keisha. And then this next question is, do you have any tips on providing constructive feedback that centers growth but still communicates if there's a need for improvement? What would your recommendations be?
Yes, I think there are a few different ways to go about it. Some people how do you have the difficult conversation? It doesn't come easily for everybody. A lot of people, even lawyers, can be, conflict averse. So, like, we never get to the hard part, or if we do, we kind of just throw it out there, and it's like, a bomb just dropped in the middle of our conversation. So, here are some tips. Some people do the sandwich approach or the Oreo approach. You start with something positive that they did. You include the constructive feedback in the middle, and then you close with something positive or at least something you like to see more of going forward. So that's one way to do it. Another way is kind of like I talked about earlier. If you have constructive feedback or something difficult that you need to talk about, go ahead and introduce that issue to the intern ahead of time. So, like, I need to talk to you about this situation. So they have time to digest, think about it, and they don't feel kind of ambushed with the situation when they weren't ready. That's another way to introduce it.
Thank you for those tips, Keisha. And then this person asks, I don't live in a super diverse area, but I want to make sure that my intern pool is still diverse and represents a lot of different populations. What would you recommend for recruiting those interns?
Yeah, I would say, for one, expand the pool of maybe schools that you're looking at. If you're only looking at schools in your state and you're not in a particularly diverse state, then open it up. You can make connections with law schools outside of your area. Like I said, career services, the public interest office, they're there and they're not limited to just focusing on just our state. So you can be an out of state firm and work with those schools. They're historically Black law schools. They're law schools that are predominantly Latino, for instance. Consider connecting to them. And then, even in your local area, you're likely to have minority bar association, gay and lesbian bar association. You can connect with them, and they can also put you in touch with candidates or give you advice on how to make connections even in your area.
Awesome. Thank you, Keisha. And we have time for a couple more questions, so I'll just send them over. The next one is, I'm a really busy attorney, but I want to make sure that I dedicate time for proper mentorship for my interns. What would you recommend for how to structure that?
I would say for attorneys who are really busy, um, making that time a part of your calendar, and for the people that you work with, your colleagues, your, assistant and paralegals, know that I'm blocking out this time, to focus on the intern. So you can include that calendar block again, rather than just waiting for these interactions to happen organically, making sure you set aside time and follow through and letting the people that you work with know, hey, during the summer, I have an intern, and maybe even opposing counsel. Hey, during the summer, I have an intern. I'm going to be dedicating time to the intern. The intern will be shadowing me. You will see the intern, and like including the intern in the busy work that you're doing.
Awesome. Our next question is, what advice do you have for interns to make the most of their internship experience?
Yes, and I'm gonna say for interns, communicate, speak up, share. It doesn't feel easy for the interns to do. And that's why, for intern coordinators, I emphasize making sure you tell the interns we want your feedback, invite their participation. And when you do that, then they'll feel comfortable sharing with you what they're interested in, what more they like to see during the internship. And you can help tailor the program to the intern's interest in a way that you're not able to if you're not having that communication.
So thank you, Keisha. And then our next question is, what strategies can you employ after the internship is over and maybe you want to transition them into a full-time role at the firm? How would you recommend going about that?
Yes, I would say include them in firm events that you can include them in even after the summer. So if you're having firm mixers, or if the firm is maybe having an event at the law school where the student attends, like let them know, hey, we're going to be there, during this week. We'd love for you to stop by. Let them know that there's still a connection and interest there. Follow up with them as they go through the process of applying to join the state bar and all of that, and keep offering your support. I think what you don't want to happen is in like a drop off of connection at the end of the internship, and then maybe they find other opportunities. Keep them engaged in what the firm has going on.
Thank you so much. And then our next question is, how can we balance providing interns with challenging experiences when they also want to make sure that they're being supported as well? So how do you kind of balance that challenge and support?
Yeah. And also you kind of want them to exercise some independence too. Um, I would say, as an intern coordinator, trying to keep a balance of their projects, making sure they're not overwhelmed with too many projects, and that the projects kind of have a balance of maybe the more complicated and longer term, along with kind of the shorter but more time sensitive things, so that you're kind of balancing everything. And then let them know, flag for the intern, like, hey, this is actually a major project. This one is going to require more attention. This is going to, so at least that they're aware of, this is a big one that I'm going to need to dedicate more attention to than maybe something I had previously. Or if it's like the firm's most important case, share that. The last thing that the interns want to do is like drop the ball on something that's really significant. They don't want to drop the ball at all. But flagging for them, like when projects are more complex and they're going to need more focus and attention, and when it's a project that just needs a quick turnaround of information.
Awesome. Thank you, Keisha. And then our last question for today is, what if I have an intern who's working with me, but they don't seem to be as engaged with their work? Maybe it's their first time in that practice area or something like that. How would you go about kind of getting them to re-engage, getting them interested in the work?
That's a good question. And, that's a situation. It sounds like it might not rise yet to the level of like a critical conversation, but it's something that you want to address timely before it becomes a bigger problem. So this is something that I would use a check-in for, and include in the check-in agenda, maybe like engagement with the work. How can we improve? What are you interested in? And being able to have that conversation with the intern then. That might also be an area where you could do like the sandwich approach. Start with something that they're working on well. And then, like, I also like to talk to you about your engagement with the work. We've gotten feedback that, on this particular issue area, you weren't as engaged with that case as with the other case. Is that your experience as well? Um, you know, and ask why, try to get an understanding of what's going on so that you can address it. And if it is that the intern's like, well, I just love doing appeals and, I'm on this trial thing and that's really not what interests me. But you can share with them, well, the course of the internship is to get you, an overview of what all the firm works on. We don't just work on appeals, and we need your support with trial work as well. The case doesn't get to appeal if you don't have the initial phase of the case. And then that way you can have that interaction with the intern.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Keisha, for all of your wonderful insights. And thank you all so much for submitting your questions today. We want to thank you for joining us for another Justia webinar. And as I mentioned at the top of the presentation, if you're looking for new legal talent, we have an excellent resource for you to use, Justia Legal Jobs. It can help you connect with the next generation of legal professionals. And as a Justia Connect member, you can post internship and attorney job listings for free, reaching thousands of law students and legal professionals nationwide. And additionally, if you are a Justia Connect Pro, you can even feature the jobs that you post, enhancing your visibility and connecting you with that potential legal talent even quicker. You can start building your all-star team at justia.jobs. Thank you all so much for joining and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did enjoy it, please click the like button and subscribe to our channel for more videos on law practice and legal marketing. See you in our next video.